We are not obligated to be in relationships where there's not some metric of reciprocity. It doesn't mean that you're equally contributing. It means that what you're getting is valuable the same way as what she is getting is valuable to her. And I'll tell you why this is important. Because if you don't have a boundary of reciprocity, it only leads to resentment, contention, bitterness, and animosity. Because you're doing everything and they're not doing anything. So you better start identifying it. It's the boundary of reciprocity. Kip, what's up, man? Good to see you this weekend. Did you have a good weekend?
I did.
This week, but did you have a good weekend?
Small town Utah. I went to Monroe, went to the hot springs, hung out with Mr. Matt Jenkins and his family. That was our mini adventure for January.
Nice. Excellent.
It was good.
They just commercialized the hot springs down here. There's some hot springs in Lavercan, and a company bought the property. It was on private property. It was privately owned, and then a company bought it, and they turned it into Zion River Hot Springs or something. And it's supposed to be really cool, but I'm like, man, I remember hopping the fence and sneaking into the hot springs when it was just the hot springs, and now it's got spas and jacuzzis. It's all commercialized. I'm like, oh, man. Ruined that one.
Yeah. There's something to be said for the old days, right? Like even these hot springs in Monroe, there's ones that are like man-built pools. It's just dirt. You just plop in there and cook like a lobster, and it's good times. Yeah. There's something to be said for that. I miss those days, man.
I think so too. There was a place just about 30 minutes south of me called Little Jamaica, and it was a little spring well pond type thing, and it was on somebody's private property. So we had to, sneak into there and like walk 2 miles to get to it. And we always brought our girlfriends or whoever we were interested in at the time down there and snuck in, and then they blocked it all off. And I'm like, this is not fun anymore.
I know.
It used to be way cooler, but everybody says that. Every generation says that. So there's a lot of good things, but also some things that I wish they'd bring back.
Yeah. I think it's different because of social media. You and I, we know this from being in rural Utah, that there are gems, hidden things that you would never know about unless you lived in the town and someone happened to tell you about it. Like I know of some caves, like for instance, out by Kanab that has a pond inside the cave.
Really?
And yes. And it's crazy. It's this cave. And then all of a sudden there's this water. It's creepy as ever. Mark my word, it's on social media. People know about it. Why? Because someone posted this amazing thing on their Instagram and now it's a tourist attraction. Yeah. And it's just like, I don't know. It's kind of sad that there's no hidden gems. It's all known to everybody.
That's actually,
and then it gets overran.
I never really considered that. Yeah. I never considered that, but it is interesting. I went to a charity event for Apogee with, Apogee. With Matt Boudreau, and I was sitting with Boss Rutan of all people. And
so cool.
It was so cool. I mean, the guy's a killer, and his wife, she was lovely, and we were having a conversation, and I can't remember, are they from Denmark or Finland? I can't remember, but they were talking about, or it might be Holland. I don't know. Anyways, nothing exists outside of the U.S. We're so ignorant as Americans. We don't know anything outside of the U.S. But regardless, she was talking about how it used to be such a great place, but it's just overrun with tourists now. And she can't do anything she used to do because there's so much tourism. And on one hand, I see it. I'm like, well, I'd like to go there. And on the other hand, as a local, it's like, yeah, I get what you're saying, though. So it's a weird dynamic, but it is what it is, man. But yeah, social media is so wonderful in so many ways, but it's really hurt us in a lot of ways, too, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Did you catch any of the fights? Hold on. I want to talk fights for a minute. Did you catch any of the fights this weekend?
I didn't watch the fights because I was, doing the little vacation with the family, but I did see the highlights from Gaethje and
man,
Patty. Dude, iron chin.
I saw a meme just the other day or this morning or something, and it had Patty with literally a chin made of iron, and then it had Gaethje with his arms and forearms and fists made of iron, and it's like, who wins this fight? Obviously, we know who won, but I was impressed. It's amazing that in Patty's situation that he could lose the fight, but his stock will go up. 100% his stock's going to go up. And I don't understand that the vitriol and the hate online about like, oh, he got his butt kicked and he's such a loser. I'm like, what are you talking? He went toe to toe for 5 rounds with arguably the most violent man in the UFC today, maybe of all time. That might be a stretch, but it was incredible that he stood in there. He went toe to toe with him. He took his licks. He got banged up. He got beat up. He didn't get knocked out. Went to the scorecard. Man, I was super impressed with that.
Didn't back down. Kept fighting. Most people would crumble. Crumble under that suffering. And he kept fighting the entire time. To your point, hats off to him. Like, you respect a man that fights like that. Never gave up.
And Gaethje awesome. Too. The oldest. What is he? The oldest. What weight do they fight? I don't know what weight they fight at, but the oldest.
I think they're welterweights, aren't they?
Welterweights, yeah.
Yeah.
The oldest in his division to win the title. So hats off.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. 37 years old, 37 or 38. And then I got watching because UFC's on Paramount now. So I got watching some older fights in between, literally watching paint dry on my canoe. Not paint. I'm not painting it. So just know that, but varnish dry. And I was watching the 2010s, I think, and there was a ton of fights from Georges St. Pierre, which I didn't really watch much in there, but he is unbelievable. Dude, unbelievable. And then you know who, this is going to be blasphemous for a lot of guys right now. And then we'll get to questions.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I dare say this. I'm going to get roast on this. Dude, Chuck Liddell is so boring to watch fight.
Yeah.
He is so boring. Like,
he's got his Hail Mary right. Hail Mary right.
He's got just incredible power, and he just needs one. He ranks right up there with Derek Lewis to me. That guy is so boring to watch. And look, I'm not being a critic as far as his fighting capacity. I'm being a critic as far as his entertainment capacity. Those guys just do not know how to entertain, except for if they get one good heavy hit on a well-known guy and drop him. So Derek Lewis lost. Chuck Liddell, I was like, you have to watch like 20 minutes of boredom for 5 seconds of excitement. But I think the UFC has changed a lot too. And I wonder how they're going to, I actually wonder how they're going to evolve with our limited attention span. You know, like you think about with baseball, it's like, do they bring the fences in to make more home runs with, like, do they change the rule? I almost think if you see fighters that aren't engaged, it's like, hey, you lose a point. Like, we're taking a point. I actually wish they were a little bit more liberal with taking points away from people. Even with Patty, he got poked in the eye hard twice, and he didn't get a point deducted, or Gaethje didn't get a point deducted. I'm like, do you not think that's going to affect the fight? There needs to be consequences for violating the rules. If you don't have a consequence, then there's no reason not to do that.
Yeah, it's totally. Well, and this is why the matchmaking is so critical. You don't think UFC is adjusting matchmaking based upon level of excitement, not just merit? Of course they are. Of course they are. My fear is that they've oversaturated. There's so many fight cards all the time. Like back in the day, it wasn't long ago, 5 years ago, where it was like fight night. It was a legit thing. Like we have fight night. Let's watch this because they only happen every so often. And now it's like fight night every weekend. And now it's like, and there's so many fighters that it's even hard to follow and know everybody as like you once used to. I don't know. A part of me feels like it's even a little, they've oversaturated themselves and it's not as special as it used to be, but we'll see.
Like podcasting.
GSP. Oh man, I love GSP, man. I love GSP.
I know he's a favorite of yours, but man, he's incredible.
Stud.
Anyways, all right. Everybody that's bored now that didn't want to hear about the UFC, we got that out of the way. Hopefully you fast forwarded if you weren't interested in our commentary, but let's get to some real questions today.
All right. So we're going to field questions from the Iron Council. Learn more, orderofman.com/Iron Council. Aiden Corrillo. I'm a young adult, and I've noticed that around authority figures, I tend to become passive and less intentional with my time. But when I'm on my own, I'm far more productive and aware. How does someone at this stage of life learn to truly take ownership of their time, regardless of who's around them? Dude, let me just say this really quick before you jump in. Ryan, I can relate to this. I remember these days being in my early 20s, kind of being in leadership roles around older people. And I remember it kind of messed with me a little bit when I was younger. I don't know. So I can relate to this totally.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's valid. I actually don't know that it's entirely a bad thing either. We live in this world today where it's like, I'm the alpha. I need to assert myself. No, maybe there's a time where we can just go back to just younger people just sitting down and shutting up, listening, paying attention and observing and gaining some wisdom from our elders. So I'm not even sure that this is a bad thing. I was in the same boat when I was 20 years old and 25 years old. When I was 20, in the military, learning from my first sergeant and, our section chief. Like I didn't assert myself. I was assertive in what he asked me to do, but I didn't assert my leadership into whatever it is I was doing. I showed up, I performed well. I did what people asked me. I took it to the nth degree. I asked good questions and I did my job as well as I could. I think that's the answer.
Yeah.
I really don't think that we need to grow up so fast, so to speak. But again, we're getting into social media where everybody has a business, everybody has a side hustle, everybody has a podcast, everybody has something to say, everybody has an opinion. Maybe we ought to go back to where not everybody has an opinion on everything. You can have an opinion on something that you're qualified to give your opinion on, and the rest of it, just sit and learn. I think there's a lot to that. So I'm kind of taking it a different direction and saying, yeah, cool, embrace it. Hopefully you've got a good boss, a good leader who cares about you, who's willing to impart his wisdom. Sit and listen and learn and observe and be curious and ask good questions and let the thing mature over time. It will.
Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, even now, I look for opportunities to be a good soldier.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to be in control. If someone's taking the reins of a current circumstance and I see like they're leading well, I'd be like, what do you need next, boss? And I'll be a great worker bee and get stuff done. And there's something to be said for that, right? We're humble. We're like, hey, what's this about? Is it about me propping myself up or is it about getting the job done? Hey, they're leading from the front. I'm going to be assertive with what's being asked of me. I'm going to do it well. They can lead. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a really big distinction here between passivity and assertiveness. And I'm not sure with Aiden where exactly he sits on that line because look, you can be passive, meaning, and when I think of passivity in this situation, I think about dereliction of duty. I think somebody's asked you to do something and you're like, I don't know, maybe somebody else will do it. That's what I would consider passivity in this situation. I don't think you're being passive by taking direction, insight, ideas, concepts, directives, and doing it to the best of your ability. I would not consider that passivity. Now, if you're in a situation where you have a good idea or you have a thought that you'd like to share with somebody in a position of authority above you, maybe the way to transition into sharing those ideas is to ask questions. So Kip, if you're an authority figure in my life and I'm feeling awkward about just asserting my ideas into the mix, I might come to you and say, hey Kip, I was doing the thing that you asked me to do and it seems to be going pretty well, but I got hung up on this one thing and I had this thought. What if we did it this way? And I'm sure it's already been thought of, but I'm actually more just curious. If it hasn't, should we try it? And if it has, why don't we do it that way out of curiosity? And that might be a really good way for you to assert your own ideas without it coming across to yourself as being directive or putting yourself into a situation you don't feel like you belong. It might take the edge off a bit.
Totally. When I read this question, we just have to cover it really quick, right? I mean, if he's around authority figures and stuff's not getting done, and you have a job to do and they're just all like being lazy, you know what I mean? And not getting things done that needs to get done, then absolutely like, hey guys, you don't have to be argumentative, but hey, I want to, what do you want me to work on next? Own your world still. You don't necessarily have to lead the group, But be careful also not to, and because we might have some authority figures that they're being passive. They're not owning the situation. They're not working hard or whatever. Also, don't use that as an excuse to do the same thing. Just because the boss is sitting around chit chatting, that doesn't mean that you should. So be assertive with that and ask for direction and guidance.
I had this really interesting scenario. This was probably, 23 years ago now at this point, maybe. And I was working at Buckle. That's my background, is retail management. So I was working at Buckle clothing store, and we were opening a new store in Orem, and the store was getting put together, but somebody had taken a bar off the rack. This was before we even opened, but had taken a bar off the rack and set it on the ground because they needed to move a display or something. I can't exactly remember. And one of the leaders, I don't remember if she was the assistant manager or a shift supervisor or something. She came up. I was sitting there talking to the store manager about some things, and she came up and she said, "Hey, like, people keep putting these somebody put this bar on the ground, and we can't have that on the ground." And I walked over and I picked the bar up and I put it on the table or put it back on the rack. And then I went back and started talking to the manager again, like I was. And it's like, I think she might have been a little taken back because I kind of stepped around her a little bit, maybe made her look a little bit foolish. But the manager was like, after she left, she's like, "Thank you for doing that. Like, just being assertive and taking care of it, because that's one less thing I want to have to worry about." And I know that might seem like a very small example, but the more that you can just be assertive within parameters, right? You don't want to get yourself in trouble or do something that is going to cost the company money, but just go handle your shit. And people are going to see that. Not always, not every time, but if you embrace that mentality and you adopt that into who you are over the long haul, you're going to win. You're just going to set yourself apart so much more than those people who like to ponder and complain and look for problems without solutions. Just do it.
Yeah. Yeah, love it. All right, Brian Sosak, how do you maintain a healthy balance of talking to yourself intently and cutting the bullshit with giving yourself grace and understanding? How do you know when it's time for the carrot or the stick?
The carrot versus the stick is just a process of experimentation. It really just comes down to, are you doing it? And I would start with the carrot because positivity, I think, is better than negativity generally. Yeah. So I would start with the carrot. And if that isn't enough, then I would move to the stick. So what is this going to mean when I get done? How is this going to make me feel? What am I going to accomplish? How am I going to reward myself? What's my family going to think? Like, those are all really carrot driven incentives. Well, how much money am I going to make on this? How good am I going to, like, those types of things. And then the carrot is, hey, if I don't do this, I'm going to let people down, or I'm going to get fired, or my wife's going to be bothered because I'm not getting work done. You know, that's more of the stick. So I would always say carrot first and then move to stick. But I use both. It doesn't matter to me. Whatever's going to motivate me to get it done. But I will say there's an important thing that you need to understand, and there's a difference between excuses and reasons. This is very important that people know this. When you're doing negative self-talk, you're usually engaged in excuses, right? An excuse is, it's not finishing the sentence. Hey, this didn't happen, period. Or blame shifting, like putting it on other people. But the idea never gets carried out to finality. And that would be a reason. So a reason would be, hey, part of the reason my marriage failed is because I did this or I didn't do that. And so that's no longer an excuse. That becomes a reason, because now what you say is, therefore, I'm going to change my behavior. I'm going to learn new skills and tools to improve my life. And so the next woman to come into my life is not going to have the experience that the first one did. Now it's a reason. And when you start getting into the pity party, you start getting into blaming other people, even blaming yourself, the difference between guilt and shame, we could talk about that if we need to, then you're just bludgeoning yourself over the head with a proverbial club. And it's just not going to help you. look at the feedback you're receiving, whether it's in romantic relationships, your bank account, the way your body looks, the way you feel, and ask yourself, how can I improve? But just look at it as data. It's just data. And it's hard when you get into relationships, again, whether it's personal or professional or romantic, where you think, oh, I just ruined my life, right? Guys that going through divorce, for example, be like, oh, my life's over. No, it's not over. It feels like that now. And it's not even to excuse your behavior, but it's not over. Yeah. You're going to find another woman. You're going to have other opportunities. You're going to have new experiences that were even better in some ways than the previous ones. But if you wallow in your own self-pity and you tell yourself how horrible you are and why you're a loser and why you're a screw up and why you can't get anything right and why you're always wrong and why you always mess things up, then you'll just continue to do that because you're not examining the root of the problem and fixing it.
Totally. Yeah, it's interesting. Brian uses the word grace, like giving yourself grace. Well, you don't actually have to give yourself grace if you stop the judgment. Like stop the labels, right? And I don't think the stick is a label, right? In fact, sometimes our labels are even excuses and reasons. Well, I'm a moron. It's like we almost use that, oh, I'm a moron, as the reason for not making adjustments. It's like stop all labels.
As the excuse.
Yeah, as the excuse.
Not the reason.
So Brian, like, stay away from all the labels. Like all that poison, that's not talking tough with yourself, right? Seek understanding. Is it working? Yes or no? Oh, it's not working. What pivots and adjustments should I make? Be curious, understand, move forward. But the minute you go, I'm this, I'm that, I actually, I live in the camp where I don't think the poison of shaming and labels on oneself serves you ever. Like they may serve you. You like might finish the run because you brought in hate and frustration to prove a point, but you still have that in you. Right? Like, so I say, let go of the poison, the self-labeling, the negative, and just focus on being curious and reality. Is it working? It's not. Okay, it's not working. So you said this, right? Therefore, I am going to, right? And so move to the therefore and keep making pivots and adjustments.
I like the phrase, and you've probably heard this, is I did the best with the tools and information I had at the time. And I've used that quite a bit, especially as it related to my alcohol abuse and to the breakdown of my marriage. And I think a lot of the times people hear that and they think, oh, you're just making excuses for your poor performance. Like you should have known better. And in hindsight, yeah, absolutely.
Apparently I did it.
Or I did know better, but I didn't have the skill set to be able to overcome it. Or I didn't know about the pain that I was dealing with and suffering with, or I didn't have the discipline. And so people say, well, yeah, that makes you weak. Right. Yeah. I was weaker than I am now. Unobjectively true. Like that's absolutely true. But I don't take it as a personal indictment of who I am today because I'm stronger and I'm better and I'm more effective. So I did the best with the information I had is a good phrase if it's followed up with, but now I have new information and I'm going to be a better version of myself than I was yesterday. And then you figure out what the new information is and you apply it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. Stick with it, Brian. Stick with it. All right. Matt Matusi. This is really funny. He says, no homo. How do you utilize...
No homo?
No homo. That's how he starts off the question. No homo. How do you utilize touch in male relationships? Hand on a coworker or a friend's shoulders, greetings with a fist bump. Is there value in bringing deeper connection? I'm not asking about a prolonged invasion of space, of course.
I say do that and stare awkwardly into people's eyes and just
absolutely
just own it, man. Just own it. Hold your hug a little too long. When you handshake with somebody, just move your pinky on their wrist, just casually,
or the inside of their palm.
Wrist. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, things like that go over really, really well. Try it. I actually like this question a lot because I think touch between men is underutilized. It really is. We are balls of energy, right? And so that energy gets transferred when you touch somebody, whether it's a woman and it's romantic, or a brother and it's relational, or a friend and it's platonic. There's energy that gets transferred. And so a really good way to do this, the first thing is do martial arts. I mean, that's the first thing. Like man, when you're wrestling and you're training and you're fighting and you're hitting and you're striking and you're grabbing, there's just something about the way that like a man grabs you. You know, what's interesting is when I very first started training jujitsu, there was a couple of women who trained in our camp, and it was always interesting to see the difference between the way a woman grabs you and a man grabs you. Like when a man grabs you, you're like, oh, this is an entirely different level of strength here. And it was always so interesting. But yeah, I think a lot of energy gets passed into that, and it's a very powerful thing. I think hugs, I think handshakes, even secret handshakes, you know, where it's like things like that. I don't think it's that difficult. Just don't make it weird, right? That's the phrase. Just don't make it weird. Kip, whenever I see you, you know, I come in for a hug. That's not an awkward thing. I give you the double bro back tap, and you know, it's good to go. Or occasionally, you know, maybe I'll try to sneak up behind you and put you in a rear naked choke or whatever. Even if we're not training jujitsu at the time. But yeah, physical touch between men, hugely, hugely important, underutilized, but not really hard to implement if you just embrace it and you don't make it weird. Or if you're really close with friends, absolutely make it weird. If you're sitting on the couch watching fight night, bro, just put your hand on his thigh and just like joke with him. Every once in a while, my two oldest boys, I'll go up to hold their hand, and we're walking down the street or in the parking lot. I'll try to hold their hand and they get so mad. But physical touch is huge, even between men, as contrary to popular belief that might be.
It absolutely is. Yeah, nothing to add, man. It's just his question, does it bring deeper connection? Yes, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. And one of the examples of this that I think shows up, and I find this fascinating about jiu-jitsu, is one, you don't need belts. We could all train no-gi, and you can train with someone and you go, oh, you're a blue belt, or you're a really good blue belt, you're almost a purple, right? Like it's fascinating to me how feeling someone else's body and how they move, you know where their jiu-jitsu is. Here's the other thing that's fascinating. How many times have you trained with someone and you're like, they're having a bad day? There's shit going on at home. There's some pent up frustration and anger happening. And you're like, dude, are you doing okay? And no words were ever said for you to know that.
Yeah.
You don't think there's energy and we're picking up on each other in regards to how our emotional states are without words and only through touch? You absolutely are. And I can't count how many times I've done that. And I know that someone's really dealing with some serious stuff, just how they train. It's crazy.
Well, I think it is crazy. And I think you can also tell a lot by a man when you have that physical touch. You know, if I go up, let's say, for example, I go up and I give a guy I've never met a handshake, I already know a lot about that guy through the handshake. Yeah. Is he passive? Is he timid? Is he weak? Is he assertive?
Scared.
Is he an asshole?
Yeah.
I know if he's an asshole too, because he grabs your hand, he like shakes your arm. I'm like, I don't like this guy. Why are you doing that?
Posturing.
That's ego.
You're like, all right, you're a dick. Yeah.
Yeah. So I already know a lot about what's going on. Or the guy who's like overly like not flamboyant, but like overly boisterous. And it's like, dude, who are you performing for? I know that's an insecurity issue. So there's a lot you can tell by a man when you give him a handshake or go up and give him a hug, or, you know, how he it's very fascinating. Yeah. But I love that question because I don't think we've ever been asked that question before.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. Great question, Matt. All right. Raul Gutierrez. At the start of the year, Ryan, you challenged people on the first call to devise a theme for this new year. Are you facing any challenges in integrating this new theme into your lives?
You know, I changed my word. My word was mastery. Everything I did, I wanted to show up powerfully and do it right, do it correctly to the best of my ability. And I still want to do that. I'm not saying I've abandoned that by any means, but I I had this thought a couple of weeks ago that I needed to create an integrity list. And my integrity list was all of the things that needed to be said and done that I've been meaning to say and do, or I've owed somebody something or whatever. And I came up with a list of about 5 to 10 things, and the canoe was on there. I owed 3 or 4 people an apology, which I've done at this point. A marathon is on the integrity list, and there's a few other things that are more private in nature, so I won't share them. But that's really my goal this year, is to work through that integrity list and not add anything else to it. Like if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. If I'm going to show up and I say I'm going to be there, if I owe somebody an apology, I'm going to do it quickly. I'm going to try not to owe them an apology in the first place. And so integrity is really my word of the year. And so far, I haven't really had any struggle in working through the list, although parts of it have been difficult, specifically the apologies that I owed to people. Those have not been fun. But everybody, the 3 people that I've apologized to actually were not surprisingly, but very gracious in their response and acceptance of my apology. I was actually shocked.
It went better than you thought it would.
Way better. In fact, I was hoping that I wouldn't hear back from the people that I apologized to. Yeah. That would have been better to me than them just like blowing up. But I did it. And the 3 people I talked to, like I said, very, very gracious, had a good conversation. Haven't followed up since. No need to. I don't need to open things up. That's not what I was doing. But I just needed to make amends. I needed to make a repair on my side. And I did. And that was amazing. So, yeah, integrity is my word of the year.
I love it. I love it. You know, mine was alignment. Getting aligned with where I was putting my effort, right? Like I think often in life, we have a tendency to be doing one thing or the other in spite of or because of someone else, right? And we're not really choosing it. We're being compliant or we're avoidant in some way. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our actions are really rooted in what other people want versus what we are choosing. And then I went to church on Sunday and we talked about the word temperance. And I was like, maybe that's what I should be focusing on. Because I get, I think temperance for me, I get too riled up, man. And I think my kids need a calmer version of me, a funner version of me. And I'm denying them of that because I'm being too reactionary to circumstance. And I think the circumstances justify my mindset, my behaviors. And I need to stop that and show up in spite of them, in a temperate manner that is better supportive of my kids and my family.
Yeah, I like that. I could definitely use some of that as well. The hard thing is there's so much to focus on. Like what do you pick? And I would say pick the thing that needs the most work and also pick the thing that will make every other factor better.
Yeah.
I think that's great. You having temperance in the way that you approach your children is going to be more in alignment with who you are as a human being, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. Me being in integrity is going to help me be more of a master when it comes to podcasting or even my morning routine or raising my kids. So pick the thing that's going to cover the most broad aspects of your life and how you want to show up.
Totally. Well, and in the Iron Council, right, this month we're getting close to wrapping up the subject, right, around effortlessness. And you can't help but like think, man, what kind of energy am I gaining, right, through alignment with integrity? How much energy am I gaining through being temperate, having temperance in my relationships and being more calm, right? And these are ways that we can just show up more powerfully in other areas of our life when we have these areas of alignment, whether alignment in integrity or alignment with our mindset and how we're reacting to circumstance.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Good.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Tommy Arnhart, please cease. Okay, hold on. Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about. I'll read it. Maybe you know, Ryan. Please see comments made on your list of boundaries and comment on the
Reciprocity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A smell a series, and I'm here for it. I don't know. I don't. Did
So,
you?
I know what
You
he's
made a
talking
post
about.
or something? Okay.
Yeah, I made a post in the Iron Council about boundaries because
Oh, got it.
I think it's important we talk about boundaries. Like so many people address the concept of boundaries, but nobody ever gets into the weeds of it. You know, everybody's like, "Oh, you have boundaries, have boundaries, have boundaries, have boundaries." It's like, cool, like what? And you're like, "Ah, just boundaries. You just have them." It's like, yeah, but like, what would be a boundary? Just like the way people treat you. Like, okay, like, can we get specific? Can we get tactical here? Can we get down to the nitty gritty so I can actually know what the heck you're talking about when you say boundaries? And so I over the past couple of months have thought about 8 boundaries that apply broadly to personal relationships, professional relationships, and romantic relationships. And it's interesting because as I was going through these boundaries, it's interesting that they apply to all 3 of those categories. And I won't go through them all. Maybe I'll do, you know what, I'll do a Friday field notes this week on all 8 boundaries that I've identified. But the first one that I brought up was reciprocity. And this one seemed to be the most controversial. And the idea, and I've got it here because I've been journaling for about 3 weeks now, every day for 3 weeks. So here it is right here. And I wrote this down in my journal. I said, there's a boundary of reciprocity. So I do not invest more time more than I am receiving for more than a short, explicit window. So there was a lot of people that had problems with that because there was a couple of things that got brought up. Number one was, well, that's not very Christian. What about people who you want to help but can't do anything for you? And I'm like, okay, I wouldn't lump that into personal, professional, or romantic relationships. That's charitable work. Like I wouldn't consider mowing the widowed woman's lawn next door as an investment of my time without any level of reciprocity. I don't need anything or even desire something in exchange for me mowing her lawn because I'm just being a charitable person. But that's clearly not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about long-term personal relationships that you have with people.
Yeah, where
And the other
there's
one,
a commitment between the 2 individuals is what you're talking
of course.
about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. And the other thing that people had mentioned was that at times you do, even in those relationships, you do need to lift other people up. You know, there might be a time in your romantic relationship where she's having a difficult time, maybe a loss of a loved one. Maybe she's dealing with a health issue. Maybe she's got postpartum. I mean, there's all sorts of things that come, just like we have issues in relationships. And there might be times where you need to carry the weight of the relationship for a season. And of course, I'm not saying that this is a hard and fast rule, but it is a boundary. And I think it's really, really important that everybody establish something like this. Now, you might use a different word, you might use different verbiage, but whatever you need to change it to make it an easier pill to swallow, definitely do it. I had one guy say, well, that just sounds really transactional. Well, yeah, all relationships are transactional. That doesn't mean they're impersonal necessarily. But I asked this gentleman, I said, would you go to work if your boss didn't pay you? How long would you stay in a relationship where you poured everything into it, but she didn't give anything in return? If you had a business partner and he was collecting half of the income and revenue, but he was doing none of the work, how long before you ousted him from the company? I think we get this really weird, soft, fuzzy feelings about like, it shouldn't be transactional. Of course it is. Why wouldn't you be in a relationship where you're not getting something out of the relationship, even if it is a romantic relationship? That's not a bad thing. It should be reciprocal. In a relationship, let's talk about romantic, for example. It might be that you're the protector, the provider. You lead the family. You make decisions. You plan things. You bring the structure, as G.S. Youngblood would say. You bring the structure to the relationship. And in exchange for that, she brings nurturing and support and insight and beauty and loveliness. If she doesn't bring that to the relationship and you're just providing structure, how long is that relationship going to last? Conversely, if she's bringing nurturing and support and love and empathy and you're not doing anything, how long is she going to stick around with you?
Totally.
We are not obligated to be in relationships where there's not some metric of reciprocity. It doesn't mean that you're equally contributing. It means that what you're getting is valuable the same way as what she is getting is valuable to her. And so I think it's really, really important. And I'll tell you why this is important. Because if you don't have a boundary of reciprocity, it only leads to resentment, contention, bitterness, and animosity. Because you're doing everything and they're not doing anything. And all of us have said that before. And that means that a imaginary boundary you have not identified yet has been crossed. So you better start identifying it. It's the boundary of reciprocity.
What's awesome about this, just to drive this thought home, you'll love this. In corporate, I'll call this an equitable transfer of value.
Yeah.
Is the transfer of value between me and employer equitable? Now, here's a crazy statistic. You can grab the statistic in the work environment and we can play and pretend to apply it to personal relationships. And then we vet this out to see how this works out really well for us. So in the event that value is not equitable between employee and employer, 83% of those employees, guess what they do? They don't quit. They
Silent
reduce
quitting.
effort to match the equity they're receiving. They go, oh, you know what? Got it. You're not going to value me. Guess what? I'm going to value my role less. I'm going to give you less. And it's not far, Ryan, right? You just look at our natural human tendencies to do what in a relationship where someone's not pouring into you? You stop pouring into them. You go, okay, got it. I'm going to reduce what I'm giving you because I'm not getting what I think I deserve. That is what most people do when it's not equitable. And then your top performers, which is your 17%, they just go to market right away because they're like, well, I'll just go somewhere else. I'm highly valued. And then they just leave. Right. There's no other percentage. There's no percentage where the person sticks around and does amazing work for an extended period of time in spite of them being valued. Nope. They reduce effort to match or they leave.
I think it's really simple. Like, and look, when I made that post and Iron Council guys are like, well, sometimes you want to stick around and you owe people this and that. I'm like, yeah, of course.
There's seasons.
What I said is,
yeah.
Right. What I said does not override that. I would never be in any sort of relationship, again, personal, professional, romantic, where if a boundary was crossed, I didn't tell the person, hey, I don't like that. And here's why. And here's what I expect. And allow them to, that's my first. I want to be in that relationship. I want to be in that business partnership. I want to be working at that company. I would rather it be good for all of us, but this is what it's going to take for it to be good. So just because I have a boundary and I've written it so matter of fact, doesn't mean that I shouldn't communicate my boundaries, that I just ought to excommunicate anybody who steps over the first time without me even telling them about it or communicating it effectively. I mean, sure, we can have some grace and kindness and empathy, but you better know, look, here's the problem. I think I kind of already alluded to this. If you're ever frustrated in a relationship, like maybe you're bothered about something your wife said, then she crossed a boundary that you have, but you don't know what it is.
Make you upset. Yeah.
Right. But you don't even know what the boundary is because you haven't even thought about it. Maybe it's a respect boundary. That's one for a lot of guys. It's like, hey, I'll be treated with respect. Good. What does that actually look like? And so when it's perceived by you that she's disrespected you, you are bothered about it because she crossed a boundary that has not been identified by you or her yet. So that's the first step. Why does this bother me? Oh, it bothers me because I'm being disrespected. Okay, good. That's a boundary for you. Now let's talk about what respect looks like and what disrespect looks like. And then let's talk with her about it. Look, I'm not the guru on all this stuff, but I do know that I get triggered in the truest sense of the word by people all the time. And when I do, I'm being a lot more aware of, what's the boundary I have that I have not yet identified or communicated?
Yeah, I love that. Well, and what might happen? Hey, here's the boundary. I want respect. Oh, well, if you want that, this is what I need. Okay, great. Now we're having a conversation of alignment. What can I do to ensure I'm getting what I want? And then we get into it. We might identify a boundary all to figure out that we need to be showing up a little bit differently if we expect that from someone else. That's a great thing to flush out.
So I'm writing this down. Boundaries make better partners the same way that high fences make great neighbors. The woman in your life, guys, please hear me when I say this, unless it's so far gone that it's past this point. But overwhelmingly, the woman in your life wants to meet your expectations. She wants to serve you. She wants to be a good wife and a good partner to you. And you want to be that to her. You want to meet her expectations. You want to serve her. You want to be a good husband to her. Help me do that. Help me help you, as they say. You can help me be a better husband if you communicate your needs, wants, desires, and boundaries. And I will help you be a better wife to me by communicating my needs, wants, desires, and boundaries. And then we can all decide, am I willing to operate in that framework or am I not? And those are the only two choices.
Versus unspoken and expectations, and it's not clear.
Which
and
just leads to
upset.
breakups and divorces and business dissolvements anyways. So you're not out anything.
Yeah. Might as well be clear and transparent about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's good. Good distinction, man. I love that. Paul Dickman, how can men most effectively disciple young men that are not their sons? And at what age would that mentorship be most impactful?
I mean, I guess it really depends on the scope of your relationship with them, right?
Yeah.
If it's a grandson, for example, there's probably a little bit more discipline, a little bit more structure that can take place. If it's a neighborhood kid, or maybe even in a coaching situation, you're coaching young men on a sports team, for example, there's a lot of discipline that can go into that because it is a very structured relationship. If it's your son's friend, there's no relational structure there, so it's harder to administer discipline. So what I would say in those situations is to invite those young men into your world and let them see what a good disciplined man does. And then explain that to them. Hey, the reason I did this thing was because X, Y, and Z. We were talking about this before we hit start. There was a woman who was carrying some boxes in the parking lot the other day, and I was just walking into the office, and I said, "Hey, can I carry those for you?" And she's like, "Oh no, I got them." I don't mind at all. She's like, "Oh no, I'm just going to my car." I'm like, "Oh, cool." So she's like, "Thank you though. That was so nice." I'm like, "You're welcome." And then I went into the office and didn't think another thing of it. But had my son been there, I would have had him do it. Yeah. I would have said, "Hey, can we carry those boxes for you?" And if she would have said, "Yeah, that'd be really helpful," I'd grab it and I'd give it to him. I'd say, "Here, you carry it." And then he would carry it to the office or her car or wherever. And then we'd go into our office, and then I would explain why it's important that we show up that way. So now you're letting them participate in what it means to be a good man, and you're inviting them into your world. And then you have to follow it up with explanation. Hey, the reason that we show up this way is because of X, Y, and Z. I remember this was years ago. I went into a local archery shop and I brought a bow in there. It was my first bow I ever bought, and I bought it in northern Utah. And I brought this bow to southern Utah. And I walked in and I said to the guy, I said, "Hey, I'd really like to get this bow tuned up. I've taken like 50 to 100 shots. I'd like to get the bow tuned up, and can you help me with that?" He's like, "Where did you buy it?" And I said, "I bought it in northern Utah." He's like, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from here, from the area." He's like, "Nope, I'm not going to help you." I'm like, I laughed. I kind of chuckled. He's like, "No, I'm serious." I was like, "Oh, wait, you're not going to tune it up for me?" He's like, "I'm tired of helping people that buy their equipment somewhere else." And I was like, I don't think you understand. Like, I'm not asking you to do it for free. Like, I'm asking you to do a service that I'll pay for, and then I'll probably buy arrows and releases and other things and introduce
my next
people.
bow I'll buy here.
And he's like, "Nope, I'm done. I'm not doing that anymore." I'm like, all right. So my oldest son, Brecken, was with me, and he was young. He was probably 9 at the time. And we walked out. He's like, Dad, that guy was a jerk. And I said, yeah, he was a jerk. How did you feel about that? He's like, I didn't like that. I said, how do you think we should have handled it? He's like, I just leave, I guess. I'm like, exactly. We just leave. People are free to make their choices. People are free to be jerks. You know, it doesn't impact me too much. I'll just go to the other archery shop and that's fine. And you know, we had a conversation about how he should have handled it and what he should have done and what would have been a better way and what would have been the outcome. And so now this is how mentoring takes place, because you're taking real world scenarios that they're part of and you're filling in the gaps that they don't get. All a kid might know is like, that guy was an asshole. Like, I don't like that. Okay, let's draw that to conclusion. Let's figure that out. Now, funny enough about that story, I was actually introduced to that guy years later, and he's been amazing. And he does all of my bow stuff now. But I don't know, maybe I caught him on a bad day, or I don't know. But years later, I started going to him, and he's incredible. So kind of a weird, interesting turnaround. But I think the point still stands.
Yeah. Yeah, Paul, I mean, what age? Well, it depends on the mentorship that you're giving and what kind of discipleship looks like. And it looks different at 5. It looks different at 10. It looks different at 15. And to your point, Ryan, right? We meet them where they are, not just where their hobbies and habits are, but also where their maturity is. So I don't know if there's a age. I think it's, are we in a position, and this is the part I'd add, a relational position, so you can actually coach people. I still this quote, I think it's from Dale Carnegie. I should probably validate that since I use it all the time. But no one cares about what you have to say until they know how much you care. Well, how do you make sure someone knows that you care? You have a relationship with them. And so what are we doing with the nephews, right? How are we communicating with the junior jazz basketball team and the kids that we're coaching, where they feel that they know that you care? And here's the funny thing about care. I find this fascinating. You can care all you want. It doesn't mean they know. You might have to pivot and make adjustments on how you're showing up to ensure that people actually know you care. You just carrying in your own is not sufficient.
Yeah.
So what are we doing in the relationships, right? That these people know that we care. So then that way, when the opportunity does present itself, we have influence with them.
Pretty straightforward. Agreed.
Yeah. That's a funny bow story. That's hilarious. He didn't establish a boundary, apparently, around you have to buy your bow here to be able to have it tuned, you know?
I mean, he did right there in the moment. He made it pretty clear he wasn't going to be working on my bow. I'm like, good. I don't want to pay you money to work on it because I don't like you as much as you don't like me. So
yeah, that's funny. I just love the fact that like you have a relationship now and that it's solid, right? It just awesome. Proves like sometimes we have days and, you know, maybe a little bit slower to judge.
Well, and I think that's actually a good point. You know, in that story, he could have been having a bad day. Who knows? Maybe I was having maybe I said it like a jerk. I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So there's two sides to this. First, I think let's just afford each other a little bit more grace. You know, like I didn't get into a swearing match with him. I was with my son. I'm not going to like yell at him or call him names or swear at him in front of my son. You know, so I just quietly picked up my bow and I said, man, you just lost some business, and then left. So there's that, you know, people have bad days, give them some grace. The other side of it is just be open to the idea that maybe there's some reconciliation with things in the future, and you don't need to burn every bridge that ever, you know, slighted you or hurt you in some way. Maybe that comes back around. I don't know if it does. It doesn't matter if it does or does not. What matters is that you act in accordance with the kind of man that you want to be. And the kind of man that I want to be is one who doesn't blow up over nothing, although I do at times, and the kind of man who can afford some grace and forgiveness to others the same way that I would hope they would afford it to me when I screw up.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Let's take one more.
Gundy. Seems like jealousy and the desire for more is rampant these days. Social media certainly doesn't help. What are some strategies to be satisfied with what we have and where we are at while maintaining a growth mindset?
two things come to mind. Number one, think about what you have more often. Whatever you focus on, that's what gets your attention. So if you're always focused on what I don't have and what I do want and what my neighbors have that I don't have, then there's always going to be a gap and you're always going to feel less than. And you're right. Social media is horrible for this.
I want that. It's like Facebook Marketplace, man. I've tagged like 10,000 items of what I want.
I know. But you know what? That dirt bike that you want, what about the 3 that are in your garage already?
Yeah, totally.
Well, I don't like those anymore. Yeah, because you don't think about those. You know, and what if instead of buying a new dirt bike or road bike, like I know you've got some older, Honda road bikes. What if instead of buying a new one, you decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to tune up this old one. I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to the old one. Or I'm going to put a new seat on this one because the upholstery kind of ripped over the past several decades. And so I'm going to buy a new seat and I'm going to slap a new seat on this. Don't you think, number one, that you would appreciate it more? And number two, that you would actually enjoy it more? You'd ride it around. You'd take better care of it. You'd get the kids on it because it's where your attention is going. And we live in a throwaway economy where if something's broken or it's lost its luster or it's not exactly right or it's not the newest model or if it does that one really weird obscure thing that you actually don't need but somebody's convinced you that you do, that you should just throw away the old thing and get the new thing. I mean, phones is a great example of that. I don't know what iPhone they're on, but mine's probably 3.5 years old at this point. It does the same thing the new one does. Maybe not like so, maybe not as clear a picture than the newer one, but that's like about it. Maybe doesn't look as cool or sleek as the new one, but that's about it. So I really think that if we just spent more time, structured time, focused time, maybe it's every morning and you write in your journal. I've got my journal here. What am I grateful for? And not just this like hippy dippy bullshit idea of like, write in my gratitude journal 3 things I'm happy about. That's stupid. I don't buy it. I don't. And people tell you all the time, like, write a gratitude journal. No, I'm talking about going in depth. Like, instead of writing 3 things, why don't you focus on 1 today? So, for example, people often say, I'm really grateful for my health. Thank you for my health. Okay. That's a good thing to be grateful for. But like, let's drill down into it. What are you grateful for? Well, I'm grateful that I don't have any illness or disease. I'm grateful that I'm strong. I'm grateful that my mind is sharp. I'm grateful that I'm fairly intelligent. I'm grateful that I have access to a gym. I'm grateful that I have access to good food. Okay. So that's part A. Part B is, now what are you going to do today to honor the gratitude that you have? So if you say you're grateful for your health, but you eat like a pig the rest of the day, are you really that grateful for what you have, or are you sabotaging what could otherwise be? Because if you were really grateful for it, you would fuel your body correctly today. You would go work out today. You would drink a lot of water. You would go on a walk and get your steps in. You would not have the poison that you put into your body on other days. If you were truly grateful for it, that's what you would do. Because the things that we love, we take care of, we invest, we pour into them. We give it our time and attention and energy. That's people and that's things, that's experiences. And so you can look at a person's calendar and say, you say X, Y, and Z is important, but your calendar says A, B, and C is important. So what are you actually grateful? Not the things that you say you're grateful for, the things that you're actually investing in. So I don't buy into the whole, like, just write down 3 things you're grateful for. No, focus on something today.
Move to action with them.
Do it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. The other thing that comes to mind too is I have a tendency, I think, that we focus on what we want. It's very self-centered, right? We're just focusing on us. And so maybe another strategy here for Gundy is just, what are you about? What's important above and beyond materialistic items and what you want? What's important to you? What problem are you taking on? How are you serving others? And we might focus our attention there, to your point, Ryan. And that's our focus, is service. And I think as we do that, we'll think a little bit less about ourselves and our materialistic items that we want, and focus on someone else that needs us, our services, and or our abundance.
Well, what's interesting about this, Kip, is the second part of that question was, how do we be grateful for what we have with still the desire, the ambition, or something for more. I can't exactly remember how he phrased it.
For growth mindset. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we just answered it. Yeah. Being grateful with accompanied action is growth.
Yeah.
Being grateful for what you have, but choosing to look outwards to serve other people or to create a mission or to serve a higher calling is by definition growth. So I don't think because oftentimes we look at it and we think they're two different things. Oh, how could I be, because you hear this all the time, complacent, but the difference between being complacent, but being wanting more.
Yeah.
They can go together. They're not at odds with each other, right? I can be satisfied with what I have and desire bigger and better and greater in my life. Maybe not the physical realm, but the way that I show up, the way I perform.
Yeah, I love it. Well, in the book, Gap and Gain, like it's a little bit of a different twist of this subject, but what I appreciate that book focuses on is that when we constantly operate in the gap of what we don't have, constantly in the gap of where we're not performing, it's actually a subpar way of accomplishing things. And you're miserable the whole time. So it's not just like, hey, let's not be jealous and let's not focus on these things. It's also not effective. And that's a great book to help you understand in what areas focusing on the gap does not serve you and or others. So, a resource for you, Guthrie, to look at as well.
There's one other thing I was going to say before we wrap it up today, Kip. Paul was asking about disciplining and at what age with young men. There was another question. I'm not sure if it was in the Iron Council or Facebook that somebody had asked, what are good books for raising boys and leadership and getting them in the right direction? And I want to answer that a little bit more in depth next week because I have some thoughts outside of books. So I have some thoughts on that. But if you are looking for a good book, and I think this would apply to Paul as well, Raising a Modern Day Knight is a really good book for raising young men, bringing discipline and structure and guidance into their lives. So, Paul, that might be something that applies to you as well, Raising a Modern Day Knight.
Cool. And then we'll pin that question
let's pin that
next week.
I got some thoughts on that.
Jump into that one. Okay. Yeah. Sounds great, man. Well, as always, connect with us, or band with us if you want to use that term, right? Whether it's connecting on YouTube or following Ryan on X and Instagram at Ryan Mickler, or even joining the Facebook group, facebook.com/group/Order of Man. That keeps us growing, all right? In the Order of Man movement, making a difference in men's lives. So connect with us.
Excellent. All right, guys, appreciate the great questions today. We will be back on Friday. I'm going to do that boundaries conversation this Friday. So look out for that. Make sure you subscribe, leave your rating and review. That goes a long way as well. We'll be back then. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.